pot. So today let's just start with something with making the attaching slip. So I'll tell you what that is. So to make this attaching slip, you need just a little bottle. It can be anything. It could be an old yogurt jar, anything kind of small. Like, so this is just an old pill bottle we had lying around. It's just that whatever you use, it needs to be airtight. So whatever, because we're going to put clay and water in here and we just don't want it to dry out. So we need that. And then we need some dryer lint. So just pull some dryer lint out of your dryer, or that works the best. If you don't have dryer lint, you don't actually have to have it, but it actually helps out a little bit. So dryer lint, this, some clay, and some water are the elements that you need that we're going to put in here. All right, so we'll get some clay. And if you have some older clay that's dried out, you can put that in there. Let me get some dried out clay here. So I have these clay chunks here that have dried out, right? And they're just chunks that were left over from something else. I can just break them up and put them into this bottle, right? Because I can't use this clay for anything. I just left it out by accident one day. So I'm just going to crumble some of that in there like that. I don't need all, I guess I'll put all of this in, I guess, since it's getting there. And then I'll just scrape the rest of this into this little bottle here. There we go. Kind of made a mess. Or if you don't have any dry clay, right, you could just use fresh clay. So this is clay I just pulled out of my bag. So I could use this clay as well. So here, I'm going to put this clay now into the bottle. So this is fresh clay and dry clay are both gone in, right? And you don't have to do one or the other, right? So if you don't have any fresh clay like this to put in, then, I mean, any dry clay to put in, just put in wet clay like this, like what I'm doing. For some reason, the drier clay seems to speed up the process a little bit, but either way, it's not that fast. I mean, doesn't take that long. That doesn't seem like enough. I probably need just a little bit more. So I'm just gonna maybe add one more chunk about that same size. So here we go. So this is another chunk. Like, what is it the size of? I don't know what that is. Size of that, like a size of a cherry. So maybe do like 4 cherry sized chunks of clay total. I don't know. Some people, and it's okay if you don't have that much, right? That's fine, right? If you do half that amount, that's fine. If you do a little bit more than that, that's fine. That's all good. Doesn't matter. This is just a substance, and then if you run out, you could always make more. But this amount will probably last me for the whole term. Okay. So I did that. So there it is. It's in my bottle, right? And then what I'm going to do is put some water in. And I just want to put a little bit of water in to start like that. And then I'm going to start mixing it up, and I'll just use the back end of one of my brushes that doesn't have tape on it. So I'm just going to use the back end of my brush here and just start mixing it up. So here we go. So I'm going to take this and just start mixing it around. So here I'm trying to mix it around like that. And what I want to do is I only add a little bit of water, because once I want to add just a little bit of water to start with. And then as I go, I want to be able to add a little bit more water and add a little bit more water at a time. So here we go. So I'm just trying to moosh that around. And what I want it to be is about the consistency of cream cheese, toothpaste, like more like toothpaste, that consistency, right? If it gets more liquidy than that, that's a little bit okay, because all I would have to do is add a little bit more clay. I do not want it really super liquidy. What I want it to do is just to stick to my end of my brush when I'm mixing around. So right now you can see there's a lot of liquid still in there, and I still got lots of chunks. Right, so I just want to keep mooshing that around here till it gets down. So I'm using this brush to kind of help break up some of those pieces like that. You see how it's starting to get a little bit more consistent. There's still some free water in there and some big chunks floating around. So this is our slip that we'll use for attaching things, and we'll talk about how and when we use this, but we need it first in order to be able to attach our stuff. There we go. Oop, splash some. So it's getting closer. You see how it's starting to thicken up in there? That's looking better, right? And if it isn't starting to thicken up, like if it's really just too thick, just add a little bit of water. I mean, we're talking minuscule amount of water at a time. And if it starts getting, if it's just a little bit too thin, you could always add some more clay. All right, so sometimes I get a little bit impatient. This is going a little bit slow, but you see how it's starting to goop up on the brush? That's looking really good. So let me scrape as much of this off onto here. And then what I'm going to do really quick is just set this, close this whole thing up, like maybe clean off my margins there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close this whole thing up like that. And then I'm just going to shake it. And shaking it up really helps kind of break up some of those chunks sometimes. So I shake it pretty vigorously, and that's kind of makes it so it's kind of the whole mass in there is kind of flopping around. And then that helps mix it up pretty good. There we go. I think it's getting there. All right, so now let's take a look inside, see how it looks. Ooh, it's starting to look much, much better just doing that. So let's just check thickness, right? And I'm gonna mix it around some more. Oh, it's still a little bit chunky, but you see how it's starting to get there. When I mix it around, it's looking really good. So that, so if anything, maybe I could just add a little bit more water to this because it's a little bit chunkier than maybe toothpaste is. Right? But it's okay if it's not quite toothpaste, like if it's a little bit thicker, a little bit thinner, as long as I can get it on a brush and paint it around later. All right. So now that I got that mostly mixed up, and what will happen with this is later, just it sitting overnight or a couple days, when I mix it up again, it'll be much easier to mix up. Then what I need is some dryer lint. So dryer lint here. And what I want to do is I just want to dump this in. So how much dryer lint do we want to use? You want to use about the same amount of dryer lint as clay that you put in. And not bunched up. Like I don't want to smush it all together and say that is about one cherry size. I mean when it's all fluffy, right? So we won't use that one anymore. So when it's still fluffy like this, you want about the same amount. So I don't know, I'm guessing that's about the same amount-ish, right? It's okay if it's not quite right, if it's not exactly the same amount. So here what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna rip it up a little bit and drop it into here, right? Just kind of tear it up a little bit. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix this in. It's okay. If you have any big chunks, you probably don't wanna put those in, but like any big debris, like sometimes, you know, like you have a paper towel or something that ends up in your dryer, kind of, if you have that kind of junk in your dryer lint, don't use it, right? Just try to pick out those. So I kind of tore it up, and now what I'm going to do is, I guess we'll just use this whole thing. It's not exact science, so if you add a little bit too much or add a little bit more, that's fine. There we go. So I shoveled all that in there. Now I'm just gonna try to mix it in. So got to kind of push it down into there and then just start mixing it in. Says we want this dryer lint to kind of end up all broken up and evenly distributed. So what is that gonna do? Well, that's gonna add fibers into this, right? So the dryer lint is really good because it's fibrous, right? It adds little hunks of fibers into there. Like they're like little hairs, right? Little pieces of cotton and lint and things are little fibers. This helps stick things together really good. And you'll notice that the quality of your slip here, this is slip, right, changes. So you see now it's actually gotten a lot thicker, right? So I could actually almost pull out this whole amount right now and just have it on my brush. So it's probably gotten too thick, so I need to add a little bit of water. There we go. So just that much, right? That wasn't that much, because what I'd rather do is just add a little bit of water at a time. So like I said, if you don't have dryer lint lying around, or because most people just throw it away, you could just mix this up without the dryer lint and you'll be fine. But the dryer lint helps out a little bit, right? Here we go. So here, that's feeling better. So I added just that little bit of water, has made it much more goopy, much more better. Much more better. There we go. Hey, look at that. So it's looking pretty good. So maybe just a hair bit more water. So watch how much I put in to change it. It is just a little bit, like that much is probably good enough. And I'll just keep doing that till I feel like I'm very happy with the consistency. So it's getting a little bit better. There we go. So that much has just changed it a bunch, and I just mix it around. So let's take a look. Oh, that's looking much better. So you see how it now just falls off barely and big chunks kind of stay on? That's pretty good. I'm pretty excited. This is slip, right? So what is slip? Slip is just liquefied clay, right? Clay that's kind of a little bit goopy. It could be clay that you've added enough water to that it could look like a glaze, right? I could add enough water to this so it really becomes kind of liquidy, like milk or something, right? But that's not what we want. I want something that looks like this, and you see how this consistency here would be paintable. Like I could paint it on with my brush, but it also is thick enough that it stays in place where I put it. That's what we want. Okay. There, because we're going to use this today. So here I'm going to clean off the end of my brush and get ready. So here I'm going to wipe this off. And this slip, right, is non-toxic. It doesn't mean that you should eat it, but just getting it and accidentally, it isn't like a glaze, right? Where we have to be really worried about the toxic materials in the glaze. Like just getting this on your hands and then eating a little bit of this isn't that bad. So I'm just cleaning up the threads there. And I'm going to leave this out because I'm going to use it later. And then what I always like to do is label this because I just made up my own thing. Right, so I'm going to label this right here as slip. I like putting tape on because I may have to use this bottle for later for something else, and I would like to be able to remove the tape and then use it for something else later. So here, getting out my pen, I'm going to write slip on here. There you go, slip. All right, so now I got my slip, so I'm going to use this today. So that's why we made it at the beginning of class. Let me move this stuff away for a second. So slip has been made.